Coming up on the show, we bring you the latest on the ANC Youth League Congress taking place at Nasrec. Minister Senzo Mkhunu will host his counterparts from Namibia, Botswana as well as Lesotho, where they'll discuss ways to develop, use and conserve water. Good afternoon. We're coming to you live from our studios in Auckland Park, Johannesburg. Thank you for tuning in. You're watching The Week Ahead. You can interact with us on social media. It's at Week Ahead, and also our hashtag is The Week Ahead. I'm your host, Mfundo Mabalana. The ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to close the ANC Youth League Congress later today. The top 6 officials of the ANC Youth League were elected unopposed at its 26th National Congress in Johannesburg last night. Let's cross live now to SABC News reporter Samkelo Maseko at the Nasrec Expo in Johannesburg for an update on this morning. Good morning, Samkelo. Just give us the very latest from just this very hour.
At this very hour, delegates are inside plenary and they are now going to nominate those additional members of the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League. Subsequent to that, voting will begin, but they will also be taking that time to go into commissions to discuss various policy proposals in the ANC Youth League's policy documents for this particular Congress, especially around issues pertaining to economic transformation of the South African economy and also pertaining to South Africa's energy trajectory. But I'm going to bring in Fasia Hassan, who is the acting convener or was the acting convener, now a member of the ANC Youth League. Fasia Hassan, just the essence of the policy documents and also your political report that you gave to conference on the energy, the just transition, South Africa not giving up the base load. What are some of the key proposals when it comes to South Africa's just transition and also solar energy?
One of the big things that we as the Youth League are advocating for, and it's important to understand that we do need some element of a just energy transition, right? So it must be fair, must be equitable, must be transformative, but it also must be determined by us. By no means are we advocating for an end of coal. Remember, our base load is, or base supply, let's say it like that, is not sufficient at the moment, right? There's breakdowns, there's this, we all have the app, we're all sitting in load shedding. And so in order to close that gap, we need more renewable energy. That comes in the form of solar and wind, but also because it's very efficient right now, even standing in the sun. I think we rank in the top 3 in the world for potential solar energy. But Samkelo, why is that important? And why does it relate to the Youth League? These are opportunities for us as young people to gain skills that are not necessarily actively available in the economy right now. Everyone who's trying to install solar at their house or their offices or wherever, they'll tell you right now the supply is low. We need to be the ones who are manufacturing, designing, installing, you name it on the supply chain. It must be young South African people who are involved. So it's a job opportunity process, but it's also a skills development process. And lastly, I think it's important to note, we can't put fossil fuels up against a sort of renewable energy. It's actually a mistake to do that. And in many ways, we're falling into the traps. You know, you see this on Twitter and some of the conspiracy theories. We don't want to fall into that. The reality is these two things can work very well together, and it can be on our terms as the South African government, yes, but also as South Africans, so we get the most out of it.
Do you feel as if the ANC is backtracking on this particular aspect of renewable energy in the country, looking at to which the unions, the base load, which the National Union of Mine Workers operates, which many of the ANC leaders who are currently in cabinet and also in the National Executive Committee come from the trade union movement? Do you think they're not yet adequately equipped with the necessary knowledge of how this renewable energy can surpass the issue of baseload?
I have to repeat so we're all on the same page. This is not at all an attack on labor. In fact, it's the opposite. What we want to do is ensure that there are more people involved and more people employed, not at the cost of those who are already in the mining sector, in the coal sector. That being said, I think there is a reliance on the ways of old, on the traditional ways of doing things. Unfortunately, and we know this, it's not enough. If it was enough, we wouldn't be sitting in the crisis that we're in now. And it's not just about maintenance. It's about moving the world and the country forward. So I don't think that ANC leaders are backtracking. What I do think is happening is pragmatism around what is possible, what is not. If we had an unlimited budget, we could install solar everywhere. We could install wind farms everywhere. What is expensive is how we the transmission element of how we take the power from where it's generated to ultimately bring it into our homes. And that's not going to happen overnight. That requires a long-term process. So we must be open and honest about that, but we're also very confident in the Minister of Electricity, who is also here to hopefully not just guide us in our policy position, but we can ask him questions and say, well, these are ideas as radical thoughts of young people. What's possible, what's not possible as well.
On the issue of geopolitics, you said the Russian Federation is not the USSR of old, and the ANC must be circumspect in how they are dealing with the Russian Federation led by President Vladimir Putin. Do you think the ANC government and President Ramaphosa is cozying up too much to President Vladimir Putin, knowing the recent global events that have been taking place and also domestic issues that have been taking place in Russia, knowing that Dr. Pejane Chauke was part of those who went to speak to Wagner in Russia?
I was waiting for this question. That's why I'm smiling. It's fundamentally important that we as the Youth League in the political report yesterday, in some ways, said what many are not just in the room, in the world are thinking. The current Russian Federation is not the USSR of old. And I think it's important that we don't romanticize it. It is not necessarily the socialist space in which many of our liberation war heroes went to and trained and all of that. You and I couldn't have this conversation in Russia. We couldn't criticize the president there. President Ramaphosa, for everything that's gone on, you and I can have very open, honest conversations. You do it on Twitter. You couldn't do that in Moscow and St. Petersburg. You disappear. That is not the kind of politics that we subscribe to as the ANC. It is not who we are. And I think it is important as the Youth League to be honest about that. Does that mean we pro-West? No, absolutely not. We fundamentally disagree with NATO and some of their aggression tactics. They also triggered what happened. But that doesn't mean that we shouldn't apply our thinking caps or nuance to a very complicated global situation. And then last point, Samkelo, this active non-alignment process probably is what is best for us. Because if we want to be a big player on the global scene, we must be seen to be able to be ones who do or who can negotiate. And you can't do that if you're too close to one side or the other. The other day I said it, the African leadership delegation is amongst the few delegations in the world who could proverbially have breakfast with Zelensky and dinner with Putin. And therein is a huge power for us to really be a part of something not just incredible, but something life-changing in world history.
When you look at current domestic politics, economy-wise within the country, the 7 cardinal pillars of the ANC Youth League: nationalization of mines, land expropriation without compensation. What are some of the key aspects of these resolutions that you want to be fast-tracked at the ANC Youth League, knowing that the ANC ultimately in 2017 resolved on land expropriation without compensation, which is yet to be implemented?
Yeah. So yes, definitely the ultimate idea of land expropriation, and for anyone at home who wants to see the nuances of it, it's not just about stealing land or land grabs, etc., but it also is fundamentally around the economy, and that's the theme of what this conference is. It's about economic freedom, and all of that is linked to each other. So one of the ways we need to boost economic development is through land, and not just through, we'll just give you the state as a landlord, or we'll give you bits and pieces here. It's about productive land. It's about saying to young people, if you want to start a farm, if you want to start a warehouse, if you want to start, cannabis processing is a huge opportunity for us as young people, because it's a new industry. It's something we can get our foot through the door. So there's a number of things like that, but we're really hoping, Samkelo, to look at the more practical elements. So we all agree on economic freedom. We all agree on the 7 cardinal pillars. But how does that translate to a young person sitting in Emalahleni, for example, who doesn't have opportunities? Why are those 7 cardinal pillars important, and what does it mean for opportunity for them?
Lastly, are you available to be a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC Youth League? What are the discussions around that? They are going to be nominating now. We're going to be accepting nomination?
I am available to serve in the National Executive Committee. I don't know if I'll be humbled enough to be elected, but I do hope so. And even if we're not, we continue. Before I became anything in the Youth League, I was an activist, a youth activist. We led mass-based protest. We fought for free education. We fought for young people. And I will fight for young people today and tomorrow and the day after that, whether I'm elected behind me or not. Of course, I would like to be, but it's not the be and end all of our activism life.
But what are the permutations around that, knowing the balance of forces that we saw in that conference venue, knowing that there was no contestation, basically?
It's always a difficult one when you're contesting yourself. Let me say this, it's not easy to put yourself out there. It means that you are asking thousands, millions of young people to put their faith in you. And I really do hope that I will be worthy of that.
Looking that you are the first female to deliver a political report in the history of the ANC Youth League since its inception in 1944, what does it mean to women emancipation and gender issues within the country in a predominantly patriarchal political sphere?
It's huge. In fact, there's the sacrosanct idea that there'll always be a particular face and look that will deliver not just a political report, but will be at the helm of leadership in this country and in this space. And we're starting to break that glass ceiling. And we're not just breaking it as women, we're breaking it as the LGBTQIA plus community. We're breaking it on a racial level. We're breaking it on all sorts of different, when we talk about intersectional politics, that's starting to make a play. But just because we delivered one political report, is anything going to change? Not necessarily. The hard work begins now, and we need to do a lot more in that particular room, yes, but also outside of it, because we can't only have young women who are deputizing or who are treasurers. We need young women who are at the helm of leadership positions.
80% of the conference venue picked up their hands when you asked who's unemployed here. What does that say about the state of unemployment in the country, of the youth in particular, and is the ANC government responsive to that ticking time bomb?
One of the most powerful moments, I think, of yesterday's political report was exactly that. And it wasn't planned, by the way. I was standing there, I was like, let's just test it. And when, despite the glaring spotlight, when the majority of conference put their hands up, you were there, I think the public saw, they started to sing Asina Mali. And for those who don't know, it means we don't have money, but it's more than that, Sabkalo. We don't have that dignity. We don't have that hope. We don't have that thing that makes us want to wake up in the morning. And it was powerful, and I allowed the singing because it was so important, not just for the ANC leadership to hear, but for the country to hear, for the leaders of big business to hear, that this is not an academic thing, it's not a statistical thing. There are millions of young people who are languishing, not because they don't have skills, not because they don't want to contribute, but because it's so structurally created. So are they responsive enough? No. Yes, it's structural unemployment, I agree. I'm a policymaker, I know that. But are we doing enough? Not at all. Is big business and the private sector doing enough? No. We need a fundamental shift in how we do our youth unemployment policy and how we actually do the implementation of it. Because until we change something, that room is a symptom of a much bigger crisis in this country.
Thank you very much, Fazia Hassan, who is a member of the ANC Youth League and former acting convener of the ANC Youth League after the firing or the axing of Xola Nqola, speaking about the ticking time bomb within the country with his youth unemployment. Also issues pertaining to the energy trajectory of the country and how independent power producers, solar energy, must come into the fore in order to save South Africa from the crippling crisis of load shedding.
To what has come from Fasia, they most certainly, as the Youth League, are in fact looking to reclaim their autonomy, because those positions are quite starkly different to those of the ANC, particularly when it comes to Russia. Samkele, thank you very much for that update. That's our senior reporter, Samkele Maseko. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us.
We may come from different communities, speak different languages, chase different dreams, but we are all connected. Our banknotes and coins celebrate this connection as we bond as families, support our communities, and boost the economy. The South African Reserve Bank has added new designs celebrating our heritage and upgraded the security features. Your trusted rands with the latest designs or the older ones are worth the same. So go on, use both with confidence. Our money, our pride. The SA Reserve Bank, connecting us. To learn more, download the Soft Currency app or visit our website at resbank.co.za.
The powerful craft their messages carefully. But what's the true state of our nation? This is where truth and facts are uncovered. A new platform for fed-up South Africans, where no topic is untouchable. 1 hour of thought-provoking current affairs. Unfiltered news, unfiltered views, unfiltered conversations. With me, Sizwe Mpofu Walsh, on SABC News Channel 404. SABC News, independent, impartial.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, Water and Sanitation Minister Senzo Mchunu will later this week host his counterparts from Botswana, Namibia, as well as Lesotho. Now, the aim of the meeting is to discuss ways to develop the use and as well as conserve water. Joining us to discuss this is Gundo Mwasime, a lecturer at the University of Cape Town, and he's with the Department of Civil Engineering. Mr. Gundo, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. Now, how critical is this meeting in a time where these four countries in particular are facing persisting water insecurity with water quality degradation as well as one of the issues?
Thank you and good afternoon. The meeting is very important if you bear in mind that they are discussing a transboundary agreement between four countries which involves a river that is more than 2,200 kilometers and is serving at least 14 million people. So the development of these countries hinges on the conservation of this of the Orange Sengo River Basin, and this is actually is considered one of the largest agreements of their kinds in the whole world. So, and most certainly the largest in the African continent.
Mm-hmm. And what are some of the solutions we expect to be put on the table?
They have so far, most of the meeting should reflect on the successes that have been achieved, like putting together a basin management information system, which is really a database where all research that is done is put in one place so that the numbers, the figures can be known, the testing of water quality. And I think what is still outstanding is the harmonization of policies across the countries. What is the policy in Lesotho on wetlands management? Does it align with what is happening in Namibia, in South Africa, and Botswana? So most of the discussions would revolve around that. There's also been a few amendments to the agreements that, because the agreement was first signed in 2000, and there were some amendments that were done back in 2020. We are not sure so far if Namibia has already signed. There were a few legal issues that the Namibian government was still reflecting on. So this meeting will also be an update on that as well.
Mm-hmm. So harmonizing remains among some of the issues. But what would you say are some of the achievements attained since ORESCO was established? The council has been put together, which is the highest decision-making body. And it's got representatives from the four countries. They've put together the task teams that looked at various aspects of the catchment area or the basin, and they have been able to produce an integrated infrastructure database, which is a database showing what dams are there, what spillways are there, all the infrastructure related to the river, so that for all the four countries that is known. The second thing is the basin management information system that is also up and running, which is an online platform, if you can put it like that, which all the research, all the information about the river is a common repository of all of that. So in many ways, there's also not been so much conflicts in an agreement like this. Mm-hmm. There will be a lot of differences, but all the meetings they've had annually, they've been rotating meetings. They go around the countries. It's South Africa's turn now, but from all the
the speeches, all the media releases, and even the information we get from behind the scenes, it appears that there is a single mind towards this agreement, which is probably one of the most sensitive and most crucial commissions that these countries can all have. So they seem to all know that they all depend on it.
Most certainly. Mr. Gundo, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Gundo Mwasime. He's a lecturer at the University of Cape Town, and he's with the Department of Civil Engineering. More news on the other side of this break. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, the annual District Development Conference goes underway. Rather, let's take you to this particular story that we've been tracking for today. The conference was initiated back in 2019, focusing on 44 district municipalities. Now, on Friday, President Cyril Ramaphosa took his presidential imbizo to Utugela district in KwaZulu-Natal. That's part of the commitment to engage with communities leading the 7th installment of the DDM. We're now joined by Thamsanqa Maqhubela, who's the convener of the District Development Model Conference of 2023. He's also the founder of the South African Council for Graduates Cooperative. Thamsanqa, good afternoon, and thank you very much for your time. Now, of the more than 100 million already spent on the district development model so far, how many of the 44 district municipalities would you say are enjoying the benefits of the model?
Thank you, Tsapiso, for having us. And good afternoon to the listeners of the SABC. The district development model is a very important aspect, not only a government-led program, but is also a citizen-led program, and that is visible from the way this conference is being put together, which is being hosted by the South African Council for Graduates in partnership with Stellenbosch University. Your question in relation to the hundreds of millions that are being spent on the district development model, I would say that it is very important that we look at the total budget that is spent on local government, not only as to what is it that the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, together with the Office of the Presidency, they are spending on these to bring about awareness of the model, which is to break down the silos in government. We need a government that is able to operate in unison, plan together, budget together, and implement in alignment with the integrated development plans that the communities have set to their municipalities. This is the blueprint. This is what we want.
But now, with the specific areas where it's been piloted, when you're speaking of the working in silos, we've heard of that, which leads to a lot of duplication and even fragmentation. Are you seeing better coherence now where it's being piloted?
It's quite too early to tell, Tsapiso, but what I am very much hopeful for and grateful for is the willingness of the leadership at local, in provincial level, as well as national government, to listen to citizens like myself who came up to say, we cannot become spectators. We cannot just become onlookers when things are going wrong in our country. So I must say that when you look at, there are 3 pilot sites, which is eThekwini, Waterberg, and OR Tambo. I can speak for OR Tambo, where we've made a significant impact in terms of job creation and bringing about young people to be involved in programs where they would then be able to become employable when they leave universities and colleges. So it is too early to tell. We got to be involved in ensuring that the plans that are in place, we are holding the officials and the politicians accountable. And I think that's what this conference is going to do, to evaluate the progress that is being made at the conference. So we will have the mayor of eThekwini, Mr. Mxolisi Kaunda, the mayor of Thabo Mofokeng District, Mayor Connie Msibi, as well as the mayor of KSD, Councillor Anelani, who would also be then giving the conference the proper perspective with proper results as to what has been achieved in implementing the district development model.
I think perhaps it would be quite beneficial to delve deeper into the role of ordinary community members, as you say that there is a role in this particular model that ordinary citizens could play. Just talk us through your role. How much of a role have you been playing, as you say that you've now assisted with opportunities within the OR Tambo district? Just talk to us about the role that citizens can play.
The role played by the South African Council for Graduates is truly the role of ensuring that employability becomes the key priority of government. But of course, we cannot do employability without industry, innovation, and export. That is why part and parcel of the SAGRA's program, together with our partners in bringing about the awards, which we call the DDM awards, is looking at municipalities that are exporting and manufacturing, looking also at municipalities that have done proper road maintenance and reconstruction. And thanks to the construction sector that has come up to say we will fund this particular category. The Council for the Built Environment also has come in on board to say, SAGRA, we're raising our hand, we want to work with municipalities to do that. So in a nutshell, our role is to ensure we've been busy since 2013 to ensure that over 7,000 unemployed graduates Tsepiso get employed, and out of those, through the internships candidacy program, we have about 2,500 that have been gainfully employed and absorbed into the mainstream of the economy. And I think that is a significant contribution by a cooperative in South Africa.
No, certainly commendable. Now, among the aims of the DDM is to implement a balanced approach to development in urban and rural areas. But if we were to just zoom in on some of those piloted areas, it seems development in rural areas is still not being prioritized. What have you seen there insofar as just the disparities between development in urban and rural areas?
The disparities are huge. We feel them when we place unemployed graduates. So we have opportunities in the Western Cape, in the city of Cape Town, and also you'll have opportunities in Johannesburg, in Namakwe, in Khamatlala, in Limpopo. You'd have young people who say, I want to go to the bigger cities. We say through our programs, thanks to SITA such as your Mer SITA, the bank SITA, the construction SITA, and others who are working with us, where we're saying we want young people to be placed in areas where they come from. Because if it takes them away from where they are coming from, they will have to spend more money on rental, they will spend more money on groceries and transport. So indeed, your observation is correct. A lot needs to be done. We need to prioritize opportunities in areas that are rural, so that not only young people, but job opportunities can be created. And we cannot create job opportunities if we do not have industries in those areas. That is why we have the chairperson and the CEO of Siriti Coal. We will have invested, as well as the gift of the givers at a conference to come and share with us avenues and areas where they would work with the South African Council for Graduates, the Department of Cooperative and Traditional Affairs, to ensure that we create jobs in areas where it matters the most.
And one would think there'd be greater prioritization of this particular element, because it would alleviate the issues that come with urbanization. I mean, many politicians have spoken about this, that if you want to resolve some of the issues that come with urbanization, is to just develop the rural areas. Then you won't have a lot of people moving to the cities, and then we've got schooling issues, housing issues, and the likes.
Of course, Pisa, it sounds much easier when we speak about it, but it's much more complicated when you look at it. Let me give you a quick scenario. You want to set up a plant in an area called Namakwe. First of all, there's no running water. Secondly, there are not tarred roads. Thirdly, the availability of electricity becomes a challenge. So how do you do that? The cost of a greenfield investment is huge in a municipality that has very little resources itself, because they do not have people who are paying for the services. But when you take that to a city such as Ekurhuleni or city of Tshwane, you are able, within a few months, you are able to start your investment and start operating. So those are the challenges we need to look at. Of course, DDM needs to look at long-term, medium-term, and short-term gains. that we can be able to bring in rural areas. But of course, at the moment, it is an absolute priority, and we want the department together with government. I've looked at the budget of COGTA, is very small because 95% of it goes straight into municipalities. We need to recapitalize municipalities, but we need to ensure that we work with entities like SAICA, your facet SITA, to ensure that there's proper capacity of financial management. As the Auditor General, Mr. Kane Maluleke, will also be at this annual District Development Model Conference on day 1 tomorrow in Stellenbosch to speak about the wasteful and fruitless expenditure that has been experienced by South Africa in ensuring that we do not go and have those wasteful expenditures. So it is a long way to go, but we've got to hold politicians accountable. We have to make sure we work with them on monthly or quarterly basis to bring about the desired results by the citizens of South Africa, whom I believe deserves better.
Most certainly. It's most certainly a very important conference. Thamsanqa, thank you very much for your time this afternoon. That was Thamsanqa Maqhubela, who's the convener of the District Development Model Conference 2023. Let's shift our focus to this story. Now, in a departure from news in last night, King Misuzulu's office says claims that the monarch has been hospitalized in Eswatini amid fears of poisoning are untrue. King Misuzulu's spokesperson, that's Prince Africa Zulu, says the reports are lies meant to call the king's fitness to lead into question, adding that he's in perfect health and is not currently admitted at any hospital. The news surfaced via a statement released by the King's Prime Minister, Prince Mangosuthu Buthelezi, yesterday, who attributed the information to Prince Vumile, the brother of King Mswati III. Prince Buthelezi said it is believed that the recent sudden passing of Zulu Monarch senior induna, Mr. Gaba, prompted suspicions that Gaba had been poisoned.
The king left yesterday for Eswatini. It was immediately after he got the news that his closest confidant, Mr. Gaba, has passed away. The news really got the king to be very down, and at the point where he even expressed in his own words and said, you know, I'm not feeling so good. It was after he heard the news of someone he stays in the house with, someone he lies on a day-to-day with, because Gaba is a person, if the king wants to drink water, he will send him, say, please go get water, please get this, you know, and then that person is in a hospital and you're thinking that he's going to come back, and then it's reported that, you know, he's no longer going to come back home. So that was the problem. So what happened is that we therefore then advised the king that because we live in the days we're living in of pandemics and all these things, for someone like him, we cannot leave nothing to chance. He does need, because he is due for his routine medical examination, and then we suggested that, Your Majesty, my suggestion was Pretoria. I said that maybe, Your Majesty, we may need to just fly to Pretoria and just, you know, get a private, just to check if ever there is no COVID, all these things. There's so many of these things now. And then His Majesty said, no, because I'm already due to visit my uncle and my grandma home, so let me combine this on the same trip to Swaziland. So that's how the king went to Swaziland. Now we hear and we're reading on the news that His Majesty is in the hospital, and the hospital and the hotel is two different things. His Majesty is a guest of his uncle in Swaziland, is not in any hospital. However, His Majesty, people who are around there, I'm sure they will see that doctor coming to see His Majesty, because His Majesty's health is a priority to the Zulu nation. So the king is always constantly checked if he's perfectly fine. Yeah.
We saw the Prime Minister of the AmaZulu nation, Mangosuthu Buthelezi, releasing a statement, and in that statement it also contained that Mr. Gaba, as you said, there were allegations or suspicions that he could have been poisoned, and therefore the king was whisked away to Eswatini. I want to ask you, are there concerns, or is the king concerned at all? Is there any threats on his life at the moment?
Look, you could never really rule out the threats on the king's life. He's a Zulu king. He controlled 3 million hectares, which has trillions worth of resources. So there will always be people who have their own agendas. But most of the time, you find that everybody loves the king, So it's become very difficult to deal with the issue of threats. I don't know how I think maybe somehow the message, how it got distorted. From Swaziland is so far away. Someone told someone, and by the time the message was tired. I don't think that it was intended by the Prime Minister to share this message, which was not really consistent with the reality and the truth, because His Majesty himself, is in shock. Is in shock that he's sick. And it's a frustration when every day we can wake up and then you are reported sick. Even on the last trip, there was a similar era where His Majesty was having lunch, and then he switched on the TV, and it was that His Majesty is sick and people must pray for him. So these kind of things been happening, especially because I've been doing the task of a royal agent, which I'm still doing. But what has happened is that an additional task has been added to my mandate to make sure that His Majesty was concerned that his people must get the briefing first, because social media is now clouding everything. Everything gets distorted every now and then. His Majesty is in perfect health. He likes to go gymming, he exercises, he does 25 push-ups a day. And for someone like that, he's never complaining about the flu, about nothing. But it doesn't rule out the fact that he has to keep his doctors closer to make sure that every day they can register any suspicion of anything that can go wrong. It is very concerning that we are going for election in 2024. The consistent card that is being played to declare the king unfit to rule, because that's what it is. Eventually people are going to be like, oh, the king is unfit to rule. Then why don't you get another king? Like we've got the issue of the delegation, the people of Ngoyama Trust, old members, they've mobilized some structures whom have been declared some seniors. I don't know, because the king is the only one who holds the privilege to declare a senior of any circumstance in the royal house. They've gone to see Minister Togote Disa and beg her to make changes on the king's word, because the king has chosen Mzimela. Mzimela is doing a good job and is reporting to the king. These are very complex issues that are not just about what you're seeing at face value, but people are just trying to maneuver. It's about power, maneuvering, just keeping control. And because the king is a very quiet person, and such things have been taking place, no one has been there to stop it. No one has been there to stop it. There was a lot of gap. There was no one talking for a king for a long time. So a lot of propaganda that got out there, or inconsistent messages, it became eventually the truth in the people. People started to believe these things that were said about the king. And the king, amazing, shocking things that people have been believing. But people must know that His Majesty has an obligation that as a monarch of this in this democracy, which is something that is not really normal to have a democracy and a monarch, he cannot have certain political parties being given preferences or special treatment, or maybe claiming any alliance that is more special than the others in the royal house.
Welcome back. Thank you very much for staying with us. Now, households will be paying more for their rates and taxes as from the 1st of July 2023. Municipalities are expected to implement the new tariffs for key services such as electricity, water, property rates, refuse, as well as sanitation. However, some municipalities say they'll strive to protect poor households from the increases.
Different municipalities are expected to implement new tariff increases from this month. The city of Johannesburg is among other local governments that have announced new rates. The city says it understands that its residents are battling under the current tough economic environment, unemployment and load shedding amongst others. It says this is why it has paid those vulnerable such as pensioners in this financial year.
Definitely, the city does cushion vulnerable residents, and part of those are our pensioners. We have different types of pensioner rebates at the different age categories for pensioners. From 69 to 70, there is a rebate which is linked to the property of their values, which must not be more than 1.5 million rands, looking at different categories of income. There's also a category of pensioners which is 70 years and above. We increase the property value to about 2 million, who then must get 100% increase. Also, it's linked to different categories of income levels. So this is done to ensure that pensioners whom you know would have probably spent a lot of time during their active years paying their bonds, investing in the city, and then the city said in their old age, they then must get some, relief in as far as rates are concerned.
But residents say they are not pleased with these increases because of the already high cost of living.
Absolutely shocking that they have to do this, because it's very tough at the moment for everybody, and this is just another nail in the coffin of all South Africans.
I'm curious, as a young person who's obviously entering the job market and has any hopes of purchasing property, starting a business, what effect is this going to have on the already, the difficulty in finding a job at the moment, or trying to set up a business as a young person? It's already difficult as it is. So having this on top of all of the current issues that we're having right now, I don't know what impact that's going to have on, us as the youth.
The rates and taxes going up, it's absolutely ridiculous, because the services just deteriorate. And we've got too many overpaid people working in the council. We must halve the number of people. That's where all our money goes anyway. You just see how the city is deteriorating.
At the same time, the city encourages its residents to continue paying for services rendered to ensure better living standards.
We continue urging property owners to please pay their municipal services. In fact, we are saying they must prioritize paying for their municipal services. This is not only for the city to make money, but it enables the city to continue providing service delivery. Without the payment of municipal services, the city will wake up one day unable to provide service delivery. For the city to provide electricity, to provide water, to collect refuse, to make sure that the entire infrastructure is functional, it needs money, and so that it can continue providing services, it can maintain the infrastructure, it can upgrade the required infrastructure. So for our residents, we're saying, please make sure that you prioritize paying the city, so that in turn the city can be able to provide service delivery, cutting of grass, cleaning the city in general, fixing potholes, ensuring that the quality of life which is expected in the city of Johannesburg.
The city of Johannesburg says the new tariffs will exempt residents whose residential properties are under the 300,000 rand from paying rates. These residents will also receive 6 kiloliters of free water, and properties valued at 350,000 rand and below will be exempted from paying waste charges. Notando Makutulela, SABC News, Johannesburg.
The National Prosecuting Authority has not ruled out the possibility of more arrests in connection with the prison escape of convicted murderer and rapist Thabo Bester. 3 accused are expected back in the magistrate court this week. That's tomorrow on Monday. That's for bail information. They were arrested at separate locations around Mangaung last week, and they're all reportedly G4S employees.
A total of 12 people have so far been arrested in the Bester escape matter. 7 are former and current employees of the G4S prison where Bester was incarcerated before his escape in May last year. Thabo Bester's girlfriend, Dr. Nandipha Magudumana, and her father, Zolile Sekeleni, are also facing charges in the matter. Zanda Moyo is accused of allegedly assisting Magudumana to claim the body of Katlego Bering from the government mortuary in Bloemfontein under the pretext that it was his brother. Bering's body was used as a decoy in Bester's fake suicide escape plot. Tabang Mir, Joel Maketa and Moeketsi Ramudula are expected back in court on Monday for bail information. The NPA says it cannot say when the trial will start as police investigations are ongoing.
It's difficult to tell. We don't know how long the investigation is going to take, but our hope is that very soon they will finalize the investigation. Remember, we cannot preempt the challenges that the investigators are going to come across during the process of the investigations. But our hope is that very soon they will finalize the investigation so that we can determine as to how many people in all are charged and decide on the forum where those people are going to face their trial.
Meanwhile, Senoya Matwara, Teboho Dipulu and Tieho Makgotsa, who were denied bail in the same court, have approached the Free State High Court to appeal that outcome. Motanyane Masukela has not appealed the bail outcome. Sekeleni and Natasha Jansen are both out on 10,000 rand bail, while Magudumana and Moyo have suspended their bail application. Kamogelo Siekwi, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
The Nelson Mandela Foundation, in partnership with the Ride for Hope, have launched Mandela Month. The highlight of the month is Mandela Day. It's an annual global celebration that takes place on the 18th of July to honor the life and legacy of Nelson Mandela.
July marks the beginning of Mandela Month, but this year the event took place under a cloud of controversy following the immediate dismissal of its long-serving CEO. However, the Nelson Mandela Foundation remains tight-lipped on the details and referred all questions to its board. So far, the foundation has said Silo Hadang was dismissed following complaints about his conduct at work.
I can assure everyone that the foundation is steaming straight ahead, doing the work that we are meant to do. All our donors, everyone else can be rest assured that funds are safe, that none of those have been in any means compromised or that anything went wrong in that particular area. We are committed to the work that we are doing, and that is specifically living up to the legacy of Madiba.
The month leading to Mandela Day was launched with a host of activities. This includes the planting of a tree to bring attention to the threat posed by global warming for food security. Meanwhile, Ride for Hope said it was pleased to partner with the foundation.
We not only encourage the participants who pay an entry fee to the Nelson Mandela Foundation as a donation, but we encourage those companies and partners to do something for those communities along the route. I mean, we've built classrooms, we've donated ITC infrastructures and labs and done the school uniforms and so forth.
Through the help of its donors, Ride for Hope is able to bring change to the communities on their path. In September, they're expected to cycle from Nelson Mandela's Soweto home to the late former president's capture site in Howick. Valentle Mthethwa, SABC News, Johannesburg.
Provoking Perspective is an art exhibition hoping to spark meaningful conversations and debates. And it's on display at the Inibos Lowveld National Art Festival in Mbombela in Mpumalanga. Let's have a look.
100 years in the making, a thought-provoking art exhibition hoping to start a conversation and debates about aesthetic experience in art, showcasing diverse art style and technique, touching on subject matters like religion, politics to socio-economic commentary.
Provoking Perspectives is an exhibition that we would like to create a catalyst of conversation with. I think the collection revolves a lot around politics, society, religion, Also exploring different techniques, different materials that were available 100 years ago and what is available right now. So there are a lot of traditional techniques, there are a lot of contemporary techniques, and there's a lot of mixed media.
And 45 contemporary art pieces, including one from an artist born 100 years ago.
Running from 1923, the birth date of the artist being Jackson Hlongwane, all the way to 2023, where the last painting was painted by Tukiso Winston. So coupled with all of that, we have, as I said, artists from around the province, both contemporary, but filling the gaps between 1923 and 2023, spanning 100 years.
A pure delight for art lovers.
And I didn't know that we had, quite so many artists dealing with, quite so many materials and interesting subject matter. It's also interesting to see them collected together. I'm not sure that they form a coherent narrative, but I don't think they have to. Each in their own right is, fascinating.
I'm very surprised about the building, how nice it is, how beautiful it is, and I feel honored to be here and to see everything.
And hope that it will inspire dialogue and how to engage with contemporary art. Dumela Machogo, SABC News, Mbombela.
All right, and that's where we leave it for this afternoon. Enjoy your weekend further. Goodbye.